Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly news recap. We are your hosts, Jacob Smith,
And Matt Morgans.
here to break down some of the biggest and most interesting stories of the week in the gaming industry. As usual, we're always looking to answer audience questions and implement audience feedback, so if you have any of either, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And to kick our news week off, we've got some interesting news regarding the PlayStation and what Sony has in store for us and for PlayStation fans around the world. First of all, they've confirmed that The Last of Us 2, Death Stranding, and Ghost of Tsushima will all indeed be released on the PS4. Most likely, they will come to the PS5 as well, being cross-platform titles. That would make a lot of sense, especially financially for Sony to put those big names onto the PS5 right away. But it's nice to know they're still coming to the current gen, and so we'll be able to get our hands on them relatively soon. If not this year, then probably next year, preceding the PS5's launch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's worth noting that the developers behind those games probably didn't want to release solely on the new generation of consoles, because there's no guarantee that audience is going to be very big when the consoles first launch. A lot of people will get the console at launch, but plenty of people won't. Their audience is not going to be at PS4 numbers when the games actually come out. So I think it makes perfect sense that they'd release on PS4 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you don't know if that follower base is going to be there, but this also makes a lot of sense to do financially, and to be able to show off this new impressive hardware that they're trying to demonstrate with the PS5. It will be a nice kind of trophy for them to say, yes, it can run on your PS4, but look how much faster it runs on the PS5, on your friend's PS5, and that's how they probably push more units. Which of course is really smart on Sony's part.
Yeah, it'll be good, for PlayStation to basically be in the position where they can release a set of really high quality games, and then the people who have bought those games can still play those games when a month or two past its launch, they then get a PS5.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's nice to see Sony kind of thinking ahead and planning for a successful launch for the PS5 and planning for the future of the PS4. We know as well that the PS5's multiplayer backwards compatibility will be compatible with the PS4's multiplayer. So essentially, if you're playing Call of Duty on your PS5 and you want to play with your friend who's playing on a PS4, you can do that. It's not a huge it's not a huge surprise necessarily, but it's a nice inclusion because, again, it ties into the idea that they're still supporting this current generation of consoles well into the next generation, at least the beginning of the next generation.
Yes.
And finally, we have some interesting news about the PS5 expedited load times, thanks to the SSD, which Mark Cerny, the architect of the PS4 and PS5, had mentioned in an interview with Wired. He said that load times were reduced from 18 seconds to an eighth of a second in the recent Spider-Man games fast travel times, and this was actually shown off in a recent video posted by the Wall Street Journal's Takashi Mochizuki, who tweeted out the video, which is all in Japanese, so I don't know what they're saying, but it's pretty apparent that they're showing off the in-development PS5 solid-state drive, which will help to run those load times quickly, and sure enough, it did. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking into for the future of the PS5. Matt, what do you think of all these announcements coming from Sony? Do you think they're planning ahead for not being at E3, trying to get a little bit ahead of the game?
I wouldn't be surprised. They're definitely making an effort at the moment to kind of demonstrate the raw power of their machine, especially with the load time news has really kind of spread through social media. So I think they're very much trying to set a bar that Microsoft is now going to have to meet. And at the moment, we don't know if that's a bar that they're going to be able to meet, because we know very little about the Xbox equivalent. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure that this has got something to do with the fact that they're not going to be at E3. They know that headlines are going to be dominated by E3 when it happens. So releasing it now is probably a smart move.
Yeah, and like you said, we will see what Microsoft has in store, but it's sure to be big, and so it's going to be interesting to see how Sony continues to keep up with their announcements, not being at the show. But moving on to interesting news regarding the next Call of Duty, which has a fascinating title. Matt, more on that.
Yes, in sort of really innovative news, it has been decided apparently that the next Call of Duty will be entitled Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Oh wow!
And yes, you might be thinking that I may have heard this before. Although in all fairness, they actually haven't ever called a game exactly this before. The original Modern Warfare was actually Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare.
Okay.
So different by one number. Although
makes a world of difference.
In confirming that this name was apparently accurate, Jason Schreier tweeted and pointed out that the sort of irony that the original Modern Warfare was called Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and the fourth Modern Warfare will be Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Which awesome. Is there's certainly some irony there. But yes, we now know that this is reportedly the official name. It's now being confirmed by both Jason Schreier and Eurogamer. And supposedly, the reason why they've gone with this specific title is because it's going to be, quote-unquote, a soft reboot of the Modern Warfare kind of sub-series.
Interesting.
Call of Duty.
To me, that is a very interesting choice for them to go with a soft reboot of that particular time in their franchise history, because to me and to a lot of other fans of Call of Duty, both past and present, that's a pretty immaculate time frame. I mean, Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 were instant classics, like fun, short but action-packed campaigns, rich multiplayer that you could lose easily hundreds of hours in with your friends. And to me, that seems like they might have something big up their sleeves. But like, why do you think they would touch Modern Warfare? Again, because it's so fondly remembered by fans.
Well, I think in recent years there's been some disquiet among fans that their sort of increasingly futuristic take on the series wasn't really the direction that people wanted them to be moving in.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say that any of the recent Call of Duties have been commercial failures. I think they've all done very, very well. But there's certainly been quite a lot of noise from fans who are not exactly happy with the direction that games like Advanced Warfare and Infinite Warfare were heading.
Yeah.
And then we had Call of Duty World War II, which released last year or the year before? Year before, 2017.
Year before, yes.
And that was kind of going back to the game's roots. It actually did very well. It was well reviewed by critics, for the most part. Not perfect, but well.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to be a good move, especially compared to where the Battlefield series was going. And it was certainly well received by fans. I think last year's game, Black Ops 4, that seemed to be going back to the more futuristic end. But it wouldn't surprise me if that game was essentially, rushed to get a Call of Duty Battle Royale game.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was really the focus of that game.
Yeah, to get Blackout kind of at the forefront of the market.
So, given that they tend to release sort of a year apart, but effectively 2 years because they have multiple studios working on different projects, it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of pushed Black Ops 4 out to get a Battle Royale game out while they've been working on another game, kind of going back to Call of Duty's roots, except instead of going back to the really old World War II games, they're now going back to arguably their most successful period, which was Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm really curious to see how they handle this, because you're right, like that is again the most fondly remembered kind of part of Call of Duty history. I mean, yes, the classic war roots, where it started, like I said, World War II did really, really well, but those modern warfare settings and games really did well for the franchise, and launched a really good streak for Infinity Ward and Activision as a whole. So it's going to be interesting to see what they kind of do with that, if they shake things up, if they go with a new cast of characters, tell the same, the same time period, different story. But time will tell, and all eyes will be on Activision to see what they do with this. Clearly, that's exactly what they want. But in kind of interesting news that really piqued my kind of curiosity was that From Software's next rumored project has an unexpected partner in George R.R. Martin of Game of Thrones fame. This supposed game is codenamed GR. Rumors have long speculated that this stands for Great Rune, some sort of horse riding based open world ish Viking era Soulsborne game. An odd amalgamation of words, but it does the premise right. It kind of gets the gears going. It gets the mind working on as to thinking about how that could work. But Martin posted on his personal blog, among a bunch of other things, that he had consulted on a video game out of Japan. And of course, after saying this, kind of corroborated the rumors that he might be working with with From Software on something. People are connecting the dots. And what do you make of this? So again, an unexpected partnership. Do you think it could work?
Definitely an unexpected partnership. I mean, there have been Game of Thrones games in the past, like for example the ones made by Telltale. But in this case, it seems more like they're not necessarily using an IP of his. He might just be consulting on it. And we don't know exactly what that would mean. Certainly his name being attached to a game is going to be big news if this proves to be true.
Yeah, well, and I think bringing such a masterful storyteller on board on one of your projects can yield nothing but great results for a studio that wants to try a lot of different things, like From Software. I don't think a George R.R. Martin story would necessarily work for a kind of by the book fantasy story. Like I don't think Bethesda would ever work with George R.R. Martin. But I think From Software, if anyone is going to do it, they're probably the guys to do it. Try a really out there fantasy setting. If it is a Thrones game, that would be really interesting, because we haven't had a really action-oriented, high-death focused Thrones game. Like you said, it's kind of all been those Telltale games. I think there was one other that was kind of had original Dragon Age style combat elements focused on the Night's Watch. But that's really it. What is the likelihood you think this is actually a Thrones game or something completely different?
I think it's probably not a Thrones game. I think it is probably something different. I mean, I might be wrong, but I feel like the news that there's a Game of Thrones game coming from Software would be much bigger news. Just like the IP deals that they would have to go through to do that, I feel like it would leak. Or at least it would be announced very early. So in this case, it seems more like they've just consulted with him for something, but we don't know why. Maybe it could be something as simple as maybe there was a plan at some point to do a Game of Thrones game, and that plan fell by the wayside, but it may have brought these two groups together in the past, which has now led to this. And he did say, George R.R. Martin, in his post online, he said that some of the stuff that he's doing at the moment has nothing whatsoever to do with the world of Westeros. And that was specifically in reference to the fact that he has 5 shows in development at HBO. But I think the way it's written, it could certainly imply to the rest of the statement.
Yeah, I certainly am in agreement. I don't think it's Thrones, but nonetheless, it's going to draw the attention of the rabid fan bases of both From Software and George R. R. Martin. So, again, all rumors, all speculation. I'm eager for an announcement, potentially E3. That's kind of what everyone has their fingers crossed for.
That would make sense.
But in other news about other studios doing really big things, I know you've got some information regarding THQ Nordic and their latest goings-on.
Yeah, they certainly seem to be growing as a publisher. According to their latest financial report, they have, or at least at the end of March, they had 80 games in development, and 48 of those games were currently unannounced. I'm not sure if some of them have since been announced.
I would whistle if it wouldn't blow out my levels right now. That is...
Yeah, that's a lot. And it's mainly due to the fact that over the last couple of years, the publisher has really kind of actively gone after buying up smaller development studios, as well as IPs. So yeah, it's a lot, but 80 is especially high, even for a publisher that owns multiple studios. And at the moment, I think it's safe to assume that a lot of them are relatively small, indie or maybe mobile titles.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we're going to see, 80 AAA titles coming out of THQ Nordic. But some of them definitely are going to be AAA titles. And I think the highest profile one is most likely to be whatever Deep Silver does next.
Oh, absolutely.
Because alongside this news, we discovered that basically Metro Exodus did so well that Deep Silver has agreed to finance and publish the next game that Deep Silver makes, which we currently know absolutely nothing about.
I love it. I love that they're just kind of letting them run away with whatever they kind of want to do. I mean...
yeah, it's a good sign. It suggests that they're not getting over-involved in development, which I think is a good thing to do.
Yeah, definitely, especially as a relatively big publisher. Like you said, they're only growing. What I found interesting about this is that some things that people may have forgotten, they acquired the rights to Time Splitters sometime last year, and
they certainly did.
Nothing came of that. That could be one of the 80 games in development. They acquired the rights to Kingdoms of Amalur, a highly, highly underrated RPG, and again, nothing really came of that besides the after the acquisition, and they full-on revived Darksiders, a series most people thought was dead, with Darksiders 3. And regardless of how you feel on that game, it is proof that they have interest in reviving old IP and purchasing and reacquisitioning new IP. So do you think either or any of these franchises are in the works as one of these 80 games?
I think it would certainly make sense. I mean, it wouldn't make much sense for them to buy up an IP and then do nothing with it. But game development can take a long time, so it doesn't necessarily surprise me if they buy up an IP and then don't do anything, or seemingly don't do anything with it for even 2-3 years, because there's going to be a whole design process. They're going to need to settle on a game and then actually develop it, and that's not a quick process.
No, not at all.
I'd certainly be interested to see what they do with potentially reviving some of these older IPs, especially something like Time Splitters, which is a really old IP now.
Really old and really well beloved as well. So.
Yes, certainly. And I think buying up those kind of older beloved IPs is a good way to potentially boost their audience if they release a game. If they suddenly release a Time Splitters game, that's something that's going to get a lot of attention.
A lot of attention, a lot of positive attention, because again, it's a franchise that people have really wanted to see back for a long time, for well over a decade now. And if they were the ones to bring that back, to modern consoles, people would praise them for it. I mean, even if the game got middling reviews, did all right, I'm sure they would still be praised for bringing Time Splitters back. Like, as long as it's not bad, horrible, they're gonna get praised for it. Which is, I mean, again, like you said, a really smart business model. Instead of investing all of this money into developing, writing, all these new IP, all these new titles, just snag up some old ones that people already love.
Yes, it's certainly a good idea for growth. New IPs are all well and good, but if you're not one of the biggest publishers, they're not necessarily going to get a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
So given that they're definitely on the rise, this seems like a sensible move. I mean, the Metro Exodus, according to this financial report, we discovered that Metro Exodus was actually their most successful ever launch. It got back all of its development and marketing costs pretty much straight away.
Nice.
And helped them to hit some kind of record profits. So, it's definitely pushing them towards being a larger publisher.
Yeah, a studio that is reaching new heights. I mean, they even revived the THQ name, so I'm convinced they can bring anything back.
That's true.
But speaking of Metro Exodus, the DLC roadmap was just unveiled, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so they really haven't talked much about DLC since they released the game in February. They released the Ranger update back in March, which was not quite DLC. I think they added New Game Plus and some other kind of features, but it wasn't a paid DLC or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a free update. And they have now finally released information about what their DLC roadmap is actually going to look like. And this kind of covers the game's whole expansion pass. And we now know that it's going to span 2 presumably quite sizable DLC expansions, which will be, they'll be paid DLC, unless you already have the expansion pass.
Of course.
The first one's going to be called The Two Kernels, and that's going to be coming out sometime in the summer. There's no official release dates yet for these. And the second one is going to be called Sam's Story, and that's going to be early 2020. Okay. And it's interesting that both of these DLCs you'll be playing as other characters besides Artyom.
Oh, interesting.
They're going to be telling their own kind of self-contained stories. The first one is going to be you'll be playing as Colonel Klebnikov in the city of Novosibirsk, which is a location from the main game. And I think, according to this, it's a story that's actually a prequel to the main game.
Okay.
I don't know how closely it's going to tie in, but it's, I think, sort of the route that you take through Novosibirsk in the main game. It's going to be like a route through that, like a couple of years before with a different character, when the city was still somewhat alive.
Interesting.
And then the second one, the characters will be playing as Sam, who is one of the Spartans in Artyom's unit, who I don't know if this is like a sequel to the main story or it's just kind of its own story. So I don't know if the other Spartans are going to feature, but it's about him going off to Vladivostok.
Okay.
And trying to find a way to get back to the US because he's American.
I really like when DLC takes a step outside of the main character's shoes, because a lot of the times I feel like it can kind of break the immersion of the main story that you've either already completed or are going through. If they kind of just shoehorn in this story, that might take place in a different time canonically within the story than you are currently. So I think that's a really cool way to do things, especially within the world of Metro. Like, any way we get to see more of that landscape, that time frame, anything, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Oh, I should mention as well. They've said that the two kernels will be very much like the sort of typical underground sort of tunnel-based gameplay that Metro fans are used to, and then Sam's story will be a much larger kind of open world area in the style that Metro Exodus kind of introduced with 3 of their kind of larger regions.
I like that, the breakdown, the separation, because if you don't have the expansion pass and you only want one style, then you can go for that. Like,
absolutely.
If you're a classic Metro fan, then you can just go for 2 kernels. But I like the idea that, again, there's this variety that they're exploring, all the things that have made Metro so great over the years. It's a really, really smart way to kind of roll out DLC.
Yeah, presumably they will be adding more gameplay elements and so on. They haven't released a ton of information yet about what is going to be included. I wouldn't be surprised if fans get to see at least stuff about the two kernels at E3.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's supposedly coming out in summer, and they haven't announced a release date. This news only came out a few days ago. So I would be surprised if we didn't get at least a release window at E3, and probably a trailer or something of that sort. They have said the one piece of new gameplay that they've said is coming in the two kernels is they're adding in a flamethrower.
Wow.
Which is cool, but that's the only thing they've said about gameplay.
So pretty much convinced me to buy it right away. Well, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we get some news at E3, maybe even sooner if we're lucky. But in our final piece of news to wrap up the week, we have some interesting news regarding the goings-on of Chinese mobile gaming company NetEase. If you remember, they've kind of been in the news a little bit for helping Blizzard to develop Diablo Immortal, a fan favorite already. They have made a deal in acquiring major shares of Bungie. Following their split from Activision, NetEase purchased major shares of Bungie worth $100 million. So they invested a lot in the former Microsoft studio. And they inked a kind of enigmatic deal with Quantic Dream. We don't know the details or intricacies of that, what it's going to entail, but Quantic Dream just kind of issued a typical PR statement like, hey, we're really excited to work with our new business partners on projects we can't tell you about.
Yeah.
But now they have inked a deal with none other than Marvel, which is by far the biggest name on that list, especially given the recent success of the MCU, the upcoming Ultimate Alliance game, and this is really interesting, especially because NetEase is typically known for making Chinese mobile games, mobile ports. But in a statement, in an official statement, Marvel said joint products including games, television series, and comic books featuring Marvel characters will be developed for users in China and beyond. What do you think of this? This is it's an interesting one.
It's very interesting in that it suggests that it's a multimedia deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes sense for NetEase to be looking at mobile games primarily, but if this is some sort of multimedia deal designed to kind of further get Marvel content into the Chinese market, then that's probably going to be a very lucrative deal for all concerned.
Absolutely.
I think the Marvel films in general have done very well in China, so it makes sense for a company like NetEase to try and push the IP through other platforms. And with mobile gaming as well, it certainly makes sense. There's already at least a couple of Marvel mobile games, and they have some larger games obviously coming out with Ultimate Heroes and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's interesting to me is we've seen, obviously, Blizzard, Bungie, Quantic Dream have made an effort to kind of break into the Chinese market by working with NetEase, by inking deals with them, but Marvel is not traditionally known for being a gaming company, obviously. So this is a big multimedia conglomerate working to inch their way into the Chinese market. Clearly, obviously, like you said, big profits there. They've found big success there so far. But what will come of it, we really don't know. Beyond the kind of generic statements they've given.
It's worth noting that it's very difficult to get into the Chinese market without partnering with a local Chinese company because of the rules that have been set up by the Chinese government on basically allowing companies to operate in China. So it's not surprising to see companies partner with companies in China like NetEase in order to get their IP. It's not like they would have this opportunity if they didn't partner and they just did it on their own. So no, they literally have to partner with someone, otherwise they can't get their products into the market.
Yeah, and I think obviously NetEase is pretty much championing that front of partnering with Western developers to try to expand into that Western market or that Chinese market, and time will tell if that works. But given the scale of their operations, I think it's safe to say that NetEase and Marvel are both pretty confident in this deal. And that is going to do it for us this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Your viewership, your listenership is always appreciated. Again, we're constantly looking to implement audience feedback and positive changes to the show. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Tweet at us, yell at us if you see us on the street.
Yes, the streets of a tiny town in Cumbria.
Once again, I'm Jacob Smith.
I'm Matt Morgans.
And we will see you next week.